14, 2024, News Report 1. Caixin reported that the sea freight prices for exports from China to the United States have been continuously rising, with an extreme freight rate exceeding $10,000 for a standard container. It was reported that on May 13, the Shanghai Export Container Settlement Freight Index was quoted at 2,508 points, an increase of 37% compared to May 6, and an increase of 38% compared to the end of April. At the same time, on May 10, the Shanghai Export Container Freight Index for machinery and equipment increased by 18.8% compared to the end of April, reaching a new high since September 2022. Among them, the standard container freight rate on the U.S. West Coast route has risen to $4,393 per standard container, an increase of 22% from the end of April. The standard container freight rate on the U.S. East Coast route has risen to $5,562, an increase of nearly 20%. The current freight levels have returned to the level after the congestion in the Suez Canal in 2021. One of the reasons for the sharp rise in sea freight prices is that major American shippers have begun to purchase large quantities of goods from China to increase inventory. Combined with the current season for annual contract signing, containers are in short supply. In order to meet the demand of major American shippers, shipping companies are rejecting small shippers, forcing them to accept higher freight rates. This includes some cross-border e-commerce companies and small and medium-sized foreign trade enterprises. In many cases, small shippers' goods cannot be loaded onto ships, which disrupts their shipment plans. Some small shippers say that the biggest problem they are facing now is that they cannot ship their goods out. Shipping is difficult, and shipping is expensive. Due to the large volume and low value of goods owned by small shippers, such as a container of composite panels worth only 2,000 yuan, the freight cost has exceeded the value of the goods by many times. Therefore, they can only choose to postpone exports or not export at all. With such high freight rates, China's exports will face many difficulties. News Report 2. Bloomberg reported that the National Biodiesel Board of the United States has requested the U.S. government to impose a 15.5% tariff on recycled oil imported from China. Recycled oil refers to low-grease oil, which can be used to produce recycled diesel or aviation fuel. The National Biodiesel Board of the United States pointed out that the amount of recycled oil imported into the United States in 2022 was $47 million, which increased to $770 million last year, and has reached $200 million in the first 3 months of this year. The American Biodiesel Board of Commerce stated that recycled edible oil from China contains mixed with fresh vegetable oils such as palm oil, which may distort the value of commodities, undermine the U.S. biofuel law, and affect the business of U.S. soybean processors. News Report 3. Australian Broadcasting Corporation reported a defected spy from China, using the alias Eric, who had worked for the Ministry of Public Security. Eric's job was to lure overseas dissidents back to China and then arrest them. His targets included the cartoonist, Biantelegio, from Radio Free Asia, the artist, Huiyong, who is now in exile in Canada, the activist, Lugua, from New York, and the artist, Inca, from Australia. According to the report, Biantelegio received an interview invitation from a company in Cambodia in 2017, which was actually a trap set by Eric. If Biantelegio went to Cambodia for the interview, he would be kidnapped back to China. Chinese police in Southeast Asia have a great deal of freedom in their actions and can use various illegal means to bring dissidents back to China. Huiyong drowned in the waters off Huachuan, Canada in November 2022. Pro-democracy activists said that Huiyong was very good at swimming and was a master diver, so the possibility of drowning was very small. Eric said that it should be other Chinese special agents who assassinated Huiyong. The report also reminded people not to think that they are not targets just because they are not targets. News Report 4. Bloomberg reported that the White House ordered on May 13 that the cryptocurrency company Mine1 sell the land near the Air Force Base in Washington State's Whiteman within 120 days. The reason given was national security. The owner of Mine 1 is a Chinese citizen who bought the land in June last year, less than 1.6 kilometers from the Whiteman Air Force Base, which is a nuclear weapons and missile base. The White House said that Mine 1's industry is near the strategic missile base of the United States, which may pose a risk of espionage activities and constitute a national security threat to the United States. This is the first time I have seen such a situation. News Report 5. The Liberty Times reported that the Kinmen Defense Command in Taiwan announced on May 14 that the man surnamed Hu, who was previously detained by China while fishing at sea, has applied for voluntary retirement, and it took effect on May 8. The incident occurred on March 17, when a man surnamed Hu from Kinmen went fishing at sea with his friend, a man surnamed Wu. They later drifted to mainland China due to getting lost at sea and were discovered and detained by Chinese patrol boats. China notified Taiwan on March 22, stating that they would first send back the man surnamed Wu to Kinmen, while the man surnamed Hu would continue to be detained in China for investigation and review. A spokesperson for the Taiwan Affairs Office stated that the man surnamed Hu is an active duty soldier and had fabricated false occupational information with the intention of concealing it, requiring further verification of the situation. The man surnamed Hu has been detained for 2 months, and the Kinmen Department stated that he applied for retirement through his family members and it has been approved, based on respect for the individual and family's wishes. The Kinmen Department emphasized that they will continue to actively coordinate through the Kinmen County government and other agencies, hoping that China will release the man surnamed Hu as soon as possible. The situation of an active duty soldier like the man surnamed Hu is unbelievable. News Report 6. Qantas Airways announced on May 14 that it will suspend flights from Sydney to Shanghai starting from July 28. The reason is due to the slowdown in the Chinese economy, which has led to no tourists, customers, and demand, so it has been decided to suspend this route. This route was just restored 9 months ago, flying from Sydney to Shanghai. Qantas had hoped for a rebound in the tourism industry between China and Australia after the epidemic, but the results were disappointing. Qantas CEO Wallace said that although the number of flights between China and Australia has returned to 70% of the pre-epidemic level, there are only half of the passengers on the flights. CEO Osmond of the Australian Tourism and Transport Forum said that the reopening of the borders is a big problem. Since the border reopened, although airlines have increased capacity, the speed of Chinese tourists traveling to and from Australia is still very slow. The number of Chinese tourists to Australia in March this year was equivalent to only 47% of 2019, less than half. Before the epidemic, China was Australia's largest source of tourists, but now it ranks 4th. Therefore, Qantas decided to change its flights to Shanghai to destinations with higher demand, such as Manila in the Philippines, Singapore, and Bangalore in India. News Report 7. British International Trade Secretary Grant Shapps announced at the London Sea Power Conference that Britain will enter a golden age of shipbuilding. Britain plans to build 28 warships over the next decade, some of which have already begun construction. Of particular note are 6 amphibious multi-role support ships, specially designed for the British Royal Navy's Marines, which can be rapidly deployed worldwide and operate in nearshore and beach environments, equipped with laser-guided bombs and drones. The British Ministry of Defence stated that the British government plans to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030, which means that the British Navy has the conditions to build more warships. Shapps said that in the face of countries like China and Russia investing heavily in military construction, Britain and its allies must ensure that the West does not fall behind. He emphasized that the British Navy must build a navy capable of matching the enemy's navy and ensure that it can win when necessary. News Report 8. According to Bloomberg, China's real estate developer Evergrande announced on May 14 that it is unable to pay the interest on its $483 million bond due on May 13, and it does not have the ability to pay the interest on its foreign debt in the future. This means that the company has defaulted on its US dollar bond and may face bankruptcy. This is the first time that Evergrande has defaulted on its US dollar bond, and the company has been facing financial difficulties for some time. In June last year, Evergrande's total liabilities were $1.909 trillion, and total assets were $2.628 trillion. In the first 4 months of this year, Evergrande's sales were only $6.5 billion, a decrease of 68% year-on-year, and a decrease of 74% from 2022. Therefore, Evergrande has defaulted once again. In addition, Vank Group announced on May 13 that it has obtained guarantee loans from several banks, totaling $7.339 billion. Among them, Vank obtained $690 million from the Shenzhen branch of the Bank of Beijing. The announcement shows that after this guarantee loan, Vank's total external guaranteed loans amounted to $35.9 billion, accounting for 14.3% of the net assets of the parent company in 2023. However, these loans cannot help Vank out of its crisis. As of the end of last year, Vank's total liabilities were $1.1 trillion. For Vank, these loans are just a drop in the bucket, and the company has not yet emerged from its predicament. News Report 9. Alibaba announced its financial report for the first quarter on May 14. The report shows that Alibaba laid off 14,000 employees in the first quarter, and as of the end of March, Alibaba had a total of 204,000 employees, a decrease of 6.6% from the previous quarter. According to the financial report for the whole year of last year, the total number of employees of Alibaba was 219,000 at the end of last year, a decrease of 20,000 over the year. It can be seen that Alibaba's layoffs are very fast.